Namaskar everyone. Today we will explore ancient Indian environmental knowledge and sustainability practices. So let's explore together. So this will be the objectives of this lecture. By the end of this lecture, we will be able to understand environmental management in ancient India. We can explore water systems, agriculture and resource conservation. We can also explore the relevance of ancient practices in contemporary sustainability. Let's begin by exploring how ancient India approached the environment, not as a separate entity, but as an extension of the self and the cosmos. Traditional ecological knowledge in ancient India was not just practical, it was deeply philosophical. People lived in tune with nature's rhythm, the monsoon, the crop cycles, the movement of stars, all woven into their daily life and decision making. Ancient texts, rituals, and architecture reflect this intimate connection with the environment. Whether it was choosing locations for settlements based on water availability or aligning buildings with cardinal directions for optimum energy flow, there was a remarkable awareness of sustainability long before the term existed. And what is most important is the sacred geography, where rivers, mountains, and forests were revered as divine, played a huge role in environmental stewardship. Now, when nature is sacred, preservation becomes a spiritual duty, not just a civic one. And this worldview gave rise to practices that were both ecologically sound and culturally rich. A legacy that we can still learn from today. India's ancient water management systems are not only marvels of engineering, but also reflections of a sustainable mindset. One of the most iconic examples is the stepwell, a structure that was both functional and beautiful. Take Rani Ki Bav in Gujarat, for example. It was not just a water storage system, but a UNESCO World Heritage Site that showcases intricate carvings and architectural brilliance. Similarly, the Adlaj Step Well served as a cool resting place and a reliable water source in arid regions. Temples across India often had temple tanks, not just for ritual purity, but for effective harvesting. And these tanks recharged groundwater, supported local biodiversity, and ensured water availability during dry spells. In fact, they reflected a principle we have now rediscovered in modern rainwater harvesting. And ancient agricultural societies also developed sustainable irrigation techniques like ghuls, canals, and check dams that diverted river water thoughtfully, which prevented both scarcity and floods. These systems worked with nature rather than against it, using like local materials and deep ecological understanding. So together these practices show that ancient India did not treat water as a commodity but as a sacred and shared resource, a mindset we must urgently revisit today. Now let's explore a fascinating aspect of India's traditional water wisdom, the integration of water harvesting with sacred spaces. Now, in ancient India, water was not just a utility, it was sacred. And so, many religious sites were intentionally built near water bodies or with water structure at its core. Take the Pushkar tank in Rajasthan. This sacred lake is central to Pushkar's religious identity and is surrounded by ghats and temples. But it is also a clever water harvesting system, storing rainwater in a desert climate and maintaining groundwater levels. Then there is Minakshi temple in Madurai. Within its vast complex lies the golden lotus tank, a key feature not just for rituals but also for collecting and conserving water. These temple tanks helped regulate microclimates, supported biodiversity, and ensured clean water availability year round. Now, what's powerful here is the fusion of faith and functionality. Like water harvesting is not a separate act, but it was woven into daily worship and spiritual life. And these are not just relics of the past, they offer a model of sustainable, community centered design that is deeply rooted in place and purpose. In ancient India, agriculture was not only a livelihood, it was a sacred duty aligned with the rhythms of nature. Now, let's begin with Vedic and post Vedic agricultural practices, which reveal a profound understanding of land, seasons, and sustainability. For example, texts like the Rig Veda mentions plowing festivals, rainfall prayers, and guidelines on when and where to sow, all were rooted in natural observation. And ancient Indian farmers practiced what we now call like eco-friendly agriculture. They understood the value of crop rotation to prevent soil exhaustion and practiced intercropping to maximize yield while protecting the soil at the same time. Use of organic manure, ash, and green leaves helped maintain soil fertility long before modern fertilizers existed. And one of the most unique contributions was the tradition of sacred groups, small patches of forest protected by spiritual belief. And these groups were left untouched, serving as biodiversity hotspots, preserving rare plant species, and protecting water and soil. They acted as natural buffers, preventing erosion and maintaining ecological balance. So, here we see a model of farming that is deeply ethical, environmental, and efficient. Kind of a tradition that cared for both the earth as much as it cared for productivity. Let's now explore how ancient India's architecture and urban planning were rooted in ecological wisdom. Vastu Shastra, often seen merely as a spiritual design system today, was originally a highly evolved ecological science. It emphasized alignment with cardinal directions, sunlight, wind flow, and local climate. Homes and cities were designed not just for shelter, but to live in harmony with nature. And the structures were placed to catch morning sunlight. Rooms were oriented based on seasonal winds, and materials were chosen from the local environment for making architecture both functional and sustainable as well. Take the example of Dholavira and Mohenjo-daro, cities from the Indus Valley civilization. These were planned settlements with grid layouts, advanced drainage systems, and rainwater harvesting mechanisms. Homes had access to water and waste disposal centuries before such practices became common globally. Now, these cities shows uh, that environmental sustainability was not an afterthought. It was the foundation of ancient Indian urban design. Let's now turn to one of the most remarkable aspects of ancient Indian ecological consciousness, the sacred forests or sacred groves. These were patches of forests preserved for religious and cultural reasons, but they served a deep ecological purpose for protecting biodiversity, regulating water cycles, and maintaining local climates. In many regions, no tree could be cut, no animal harmed, because the grove was considered the abode of a deity, the concept of Asthalavat. Sacred trees like peepal, banyan, and neem reflect this mindset. These trees were not just revered, they were central to ecosystem health. For instance, the peepal releases oxygen even at night, and all three trees support rich biodiversity. Ancient texts like the Vedas, Puranas, and Smritis mention forest conservation, and there were ritual penalties for harming trees, and entire forests were named after sages and gods to ensure their protection. And these groups were an early form of community based conservation, which was sustainable, spiritual, and effective. Let's explore Rajasthan, a region known for its arid climate, but also for its brilliant water wisdom. Despite the scarcity of rainfall, ancient Rajasthanis developed highly adaptive water management systems. They understood their terrain and built step wells, locally called bauris or baulis, not just as water sources, but as cooling spaces, community gathering points, and spiritual sites. Some, like Rani Ki Vav, are marvels of architecture and engineering. They also mastered rainwater harvesting, channeling runoff from rooftops and catchment areas into tanks called kunds, johats, and tanks. Today, cities like Jodhpur and Udaipur are reviving these techniques. Rooftop harvesting and community tanks are being integrated into urban water planning, drawing from ancient models for modern sustainability. So, Rajasthan shows us that tradition and innovation can work hand in hand to solve water challenges, even in the driest places. Now let's move to case study 2, the role of sacred trees in environmental conservation. In ancient India, certain trees were not just botanical entities, they were considered sacred life forms. Trees like the peepal, Ficus religiosa, banyan or Ficus bengalensis, and mango were worshipped, often associated with deities, rituals, and cosmic symbolism. This spiritual reverence created a natural layer of environmental protection. For example, the peepal tree, known to release oxygen even at night, though it was linked to photosynthesis process where plant use carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight to synthesize its food. But in ancient India, it was said that peepal tree release oxygen at night. That's why it was considered sacred and useful for the society. So peepal tree were often planted near temples and at village centers, as you had already seen in your villages and temples also. It ensured its protection. Then we have the Vishnoi community of Rajasthan, true ecological warriors. Guided by 15th century spiritual leader Guru Jambheshwar, their religious code includes 29 principles, many of which are directly about conserving nature. In 1730, the Bisnois set a historic example in the Khezrali massacre, where over 350 members gave their lives to protect trees from being cut down. This case teaches us how deeply embedded environmental ethics were in ancient Indian belief systems, long before modern environmentalism emerged. To wrap up, ancient Indian environmental practices provide us with the invaluable lessons in sustainability. And these practices were not just about surviving, they were about living in harmony with nature. From sacred groups to water systems, ancient India's holistic approach to the environment is something we can look to today as we seek sustainable solutions for modern challenges. And the key takeaway is the importance of integrating traditional knowledge. The knowledge that spans centuries with modern technological solutions. Ancient wisdom grounded in balance and reverence for nature can guide us towards a more sustainable future in today's rapidly urbanizing world. As we move forward, in our next lecture, we will focus on mapping and analyzing ancient geospatial practices, understanding how ancient spatial knowledge shaped and informed the landscapes of India. Thank you.